At the start of the 18th century, British politics was locked in a bitter stalemate. Two rival factions tore at the country's fabric: the Whigs, backing the power of Parliament, and the Tories, defending the authority of the Crown. The system was broken. The monarch sat at the top, and a fractured Parliament below, missing a structural bridge to pass laws. In 1721, Sir Robert Walpole stepped into that void. With charm and patronage, he became the stabilizing link between the two. This new executive power required a permanent address. Walpole became the first leader to live at 10 Downing Street, establishing a physical center of gravity for British government. Walpole did not formally apply for the job. By simply managing the daily chaos between the monarch and the lawmakers, he constructed an entirely new office that would outlast him by centuries. For its first 100 years, the role remained an exclusive club. Early leaders like the Duke of Newcastle largely avoided the spotlight, preferring to pull political levers from the quiet, wealthy benches of the House of Lords. These early politicians drew their authority directly from the monarch, which made them incredibly fragile. Lord North discovered this when the American War of Independence broke out. Despite his calm management, losing the colonies permanently shattered his government. To these men, running the country was a matter of noble obligation, completely detached from the desires of the common citizen. The Prime Minister in this era functioned as a high-level administrator for the King's empire. The idea of answering to a democratic public did not yet exist. By the 19th century, booming factories and crowded cities broke the old system. The population shifted rapidly to urban centers, generating immense wealth and demanding new protections for workers. Leaders like Earl Grey recognized the pressure and pushed through the Great Reform Act of 1832. By expanding voting rights to the urban middle class, the law forced future leaders to actually court the approval of a larger, louder electorate. This new dynamic created the first true political rivalries, forcing voters to choose between sharply contrasting visions for the nation's future. William Gladstone approached the office as a strict moral crusade. Driven by conscience and faith, he spent 4 separate terms fighting to expand education and modernize the civil service. His constant rival, Benjamin Disraeli, offered something entirely different. A novelist by trade, Disraeli governed with imagination and flair, focusing on strengthening the British Empire and expanding global influence. The job description had mutated. Maintaining power now required the Prime Minister to persuade a massive, diverse electorate to support a specific political vision. Entering the 20th century, the electorate expanded again, and technology closed the distance between the government and the governed. Leaders like Stanley Baldwin used the newly invented radio to project their voices directly into citizens' living rooms. When Nazi Germany threatened the survival of the nation, the public required a specific kind of strength. Winston Churchill took office and immediately turned the English language into a weapon of war, inspiring resistance through a microphone. But the moment peace was secured, the exhausted country demanded immediate domestic rebuilding. They abruptly voted Churchill out and installed the quiet, unassuming Clement Attlee. Attlee led one of the most aggressive reform governments in history. He nationalized key industries and founded the National Health Service, establishing a massive social safety net that remains intact today. Abroad, however, the old authority was slipping. In 1956, Anthony Eden's disastrous handling of the Suez Crisis ended in global humiliation, exposing that Britain could no longer dictate terms to the rest of the world. The office was now caught in a grueling bind. Modern prime ministers were expected to project power on a volatile global stage, while simultaneously managing vast, expensive domestic systems at home. By the late 1900s, television cameras and intense economic pressures required leaders who could force through painful changes while maintaining a commanding media presence. Margaret Thatcher met this demand by breaking the power of trade unions and privatizing state industries. She governed with an unflinching belief, transforming whole communities while leaving a deeply divided public in her wake. A decade later, Tony Blair swept in by rebranding his party as New Labour. He paired economic pragmatism with expert public relations, though his legacy was severely damaged by his decision to join the Iraq War. Soon, the sheer velocity of global events began to break the people in charge. Subsequent leaders faced rapid-fire financial crashes and sweeping constitutional votes that proved impossible to control. The 2016 vote to leave the European Union consumed Downing Street. Navigating Brexit eroded the authority of successive leaders, paralyzing Parliament and forcing resignations in rapid sequence. The office has become a hyper-scrutinized gauntlet where failure is immediate. This volatility peaked when Liz Truss triggered a severe market panic, forcing her resignation after a record-setting 49 days in power. In 2024, after years of political chaos, the electorate handed a landslide victory to Keir Starmer. A former prosecutor, he offered voters a promise of discipline, stability, and quiet competence. Today's leaders operate under the glare of continuous global broadcasting, a far cry from the quiet backroom arrangements managed by Sir Robert Walpole 3 centuries ago. Over 3 centuries, the public summoned whatever specific archetype it needed to survive the moment: steady administrators for economic strain, defiant bulldogs for global conflicts, and relentless visionaries for social change. The office at number 10 Downing Street remains a mirror of the nation. The specific pressures and demands of British history determine the exact type of leader who walks through that black door.